The difference between Russian and Ukrainian news is that Russian news highlights its successes even if they are not there, while Ukrainian news is more restrained in its assessments and leaves room for further developments. Russians, yes, we have moved away from the settlement. But it doesn't affect anything overall, we are winning. Ukrainians, we have liberated the settlement. But this in fact, does not change in general. There will be further seen. This is a perennial theme, the question between showing off and modesty. Remember how many Leopard 2s were destroyed according to Russian reports, as savored by Russian propagandists. More than they were actually supplied by their partners. But in 13 weeks of offensive, Ukraine has lost only 5 Leopard 2 tanks out of 71 supplied by the West, 10 more are damaged. The Ukrainians are fixing these tanks at depots in Poland and Germany and returning them to the front. Another important aspect is that almost every crew member of the 5 tanks destroyed managed to leave the vehicle. These results are far superior to the situation with Leopard 1 tanks, which will be massively supplied to Ukraine. But this is outside the scope of today's video. Meanwhile, in the Berdansk direction, the Russian armed forces have started withdrawing their units to the Pryuty-Zavytne-Boshchanya line, fighting hard rearguard battles. Explanation: rearguard battles are battles fought by a retreating army to slow down the enemy who is pursuing them. In the coming days, it becomes tactically important for the Russian side to hold Pryuty. After all, there is a road with a key junction in Staromlinivka. The enemy will hold it at any cost. Powerful defense lines have been equipped on the flanks. There are allocated significant forces, one of the leading roles are played by units of Marines. But unlike the Tokmak direction, here the AFU is advancing much wider. This forces the Russian command to send some reserves to the flank areas, which reduces the density of their combat orders. This has already played a cruel joke on the occupiers in the Ukrashne area. At the most crucial moment they lacked reserves. At the same time, the Russians are forced to hold back some of their reserves, as they do not know in advance which of the areas in the offensive strip of the Ukrainian defense forces is the place of application of their main efforts. Due to the high mobility of its units, the AFU command is constantly changing this place. The expansion of the AFU offensive strip leads to the fact that the Russian command has a growing number of areas that need to be covered at the same time. Currently, the danger of being hit in a vulnerable area has forced the enemy to move their units north of Pryuty. Otherwise, they would have had to react urgently as it was during the fighting for Staromayorsk, although then the enemy managed to do it quickly enough and did not allow the AFU to collapse their left flank. The expansion of the AFU offensive in the Berdyansk direction gives the Ukrainian commanders the opportunity to make more active use of the so-called detours and envelopes. There may be more such opportunities here than in the Tokmak direction. At least, the probability of such opportunities becomes much greater than in the Tokmak direction, where in fact the AFU has recently broken through the enemy's defense in a rather narrow strip and started to be active in the flank areas only recently. And with this, the enemy also has to reckon.